The Yankees lost a thriller to the Mets and then continued a proud tradition of poaching former World Series champion Red Sox players. Meanwhile, the best player of this generation got some bad news, and that could be horrible for baseball. I really hope I'm wrong, but I'm right in telling you that we're about to start Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Every day. Easy for you to say. It's your team every day, and it's easy for you to say. I am obviously a professional podcaster. I'm not even going to edit that out. My name is Paul Francis Sully, but if you're watching me on the YouTubes, you know you can call me Sully. For those of you who know who I am, I've been podcasting baseball for over a decade. I've been nominated for an Emmy as a TV producer, worked on some big shows, worked on some shows you never heard of. I've directed films and video projects and appeared on HBO Sports and ESPN2, TV show here, a movie over there. And now I'm here on your YouTube page or on your podcasting catcher talking about baseball. And if you happen to have a smart device, be sure to tell it to play podcast Locked On MLB or check out some of the other great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network, including Locked On Yankees with my dear friend Stacy Gotsulias, who has a lot to talk about these days. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pod, same handle for Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. If you remember yesterday's show, I recorded relatively late, and I was able to catch some of the afternoon games and talked about the Giants and wondering, can they truly be this bad? Well, they lost again. And for a while it looked like, hey, they may have been able to win that game. But then, Logan Webb, who's a good pitcher, is having a pretty decent year. It was too much. Ketel Marte and the Diamondbacks wound up beating them 5-3. So the Giants are now 2 games under 500. I don't understand it. Some other games of note from Wednesday that I didn't cover. Any fear of Julio Rodriguez's career being derailed by the home run derby has been squashed. He homered the other day. He had a go-ahead home run against the Rangers on Wednesday afternoon. The Mariners won that game 4-2, and it's an interesting matchup. Remember, they got swept by the Houston Astros, and it kind of, put a button on any idea of the Mariners realistically challenging the Astros for the division title. Well, right across the bay, as I'm recording this from the auxiliary Locked On MLB studio. I almost said the Sully Baseball studio in Palo Alto, California. Right across the bay I'm in Palo Alto right now, across the bay from where I am sitting right now. The A's finished a sweep of the Astros. Good for the A's. Good for Cole Irvin and company. And, the A's overcame a Yordan Alvarez home run. Stephen Piscotty and company did a good job. They doubled up the Astros 4-2. And that mixed with the Mariners sweep of the Rangers. All of a sudden, the Mariners, granted, they're 10 games back. But that's a lot different than 13 games back. And we'll get into in the final segment of the significance of that. The trade deadline is going to be is bearing down upon us. There's already activity. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. Luis Castillo pitched probably his final game for the Cincinnati Reds, and if it was a showcase against the Marlins, he did a really good job. Pitched 7 strong innings, letting up 3 runs. He let up a pair of home runs, but basically pitched to the scoreboard and wound up winning that game. And the Reds, I hope the Reds fans gave him a nice farewell, because that's probably it for him. Another strange game. Kendall Graveman walked everybody in Coors Field. You can't do that. When you're in Coors Field, you can't be giving up a ton of walks. And he walked like 3 straight batters and let up a walk-off single. And the White Sox, who are trying to struggle their way back into this whole thing, wound up having a walk-off loss in Coors. With the Twins losing that game to Milwaukee with Rowdy Tellez hitting all the home runs, it was the Cleveland Guardians who took the most advantage of it. Now, Bobby Dahlbeck of the Red Sox hit a couple of home runs, but Franchi Cordero said, hey, hold my beer, and he committed 3 errors in a really dumb loss for the Red Sox. Another dumb loss. The Red Sox are now a sub-500 team after the All-Star break. There's rumors that they may be trading away some of their players. Well, the Guardians are now only 1 game back in the loss column of first place. Look out for them. They can pitch. They can hit at the right time. Watch this be the year. There's a sick, twisted part of me that wants Cleveland to win the World Series this year. The first year that they changed their name, they win it all. And they're a winning team right now. They're knocking on the door of the division title. They're only 1 game back in the loss column right now, and they're going to be playing the Red Sox tomorrow. The Red Sox can't win to save their soul, and the Minnesota is idle. So if the Cleveland Guardians win tomorrow, they will be 1 game out. 1 game out of the win column, 1 game out of the loss. So truly 1 game out of first place in July. So interesting times are happening here. And of course, the game of the night was the Subway Series game. Max Scherzer on his birthday was brilliant through 7 innings. Pete Alonso homered, and it just looked like the story was there. He was going to throw the shutout and everything. They lifted him after 7 innings. I get it. But then just immediately, I think it was Peterson let up a 2-run home run to Torres to tie the game, but Marte walked it off in the 9th. And thank goodness he walked it off in the 9th. We don't have to see that stupid ghost runner on second. I didn't realize it was only a 2-game series. I thought it was a 3-game series, but the Mets won both of them. So I guess, is that a sweep? A 2-game sweep just feels weird. But the Mets, good on the Mets. They won both games. They didn't have to use Diaz. And with Atlanta's loss to Philadelphia, they have a 3-game lead for in the National League East, and they trail. They trail Los Angeles by 4 in the win column and 5 in the loss column. LA is probably, then again, who knows? Any team can have a bad stretch, but in terms of avoiding the wild card series, the Mets and Dodgers look like they're in pretty good shape. No disrespect to Milwaukee. Well, the first big trade happened. The first shot fired across the proverbial bow, and it was all-star Andrew Benintendi, who for a while looked like he was a poster child for players with a great promise who faded out, and the Red Sox unceremoniously dumped him to Kansas City a couple of years ago. He was always a Yankee killer when he played for the Red Sox. The Yankees are picking him up. They have Andrew Benintendi, and they have Aaron Hicks, and they have Judge. They have, with Stanton injured, there's probably going to play a lot of Donaldson at third and LeMahieu at DH. This makes Joey Gallo the odd man out. Joey Gallo's been awful for the Yankees. He's a very easy guy to root for, even me as a classic Yankee hater, but he just has not been working out. And Benintendi, who has a perfect swing for Yankee Stadium, it's going to be tough to see a former Red Sox World Series winner wearing the Yankee pinstripes, but it's a really, really smart move for the Yankees. It was not, I mean, I don't know if they were realistically in a Juan Soto market. I don't know if they have the chips to pick up a Juan Soto. Some other teams certainly seem to have more chips to play with, but it's a solid move for the Yankees. The Yankees have a proud tradition of picking up former Red Sox who have won World Series titles and importing them. Obviously, the biggest one is Babe Ruth. when the Red Sox were winning titles in the 1910s. There was a bunch of players, including Red Ruffing and Carl Mays, who came along, and Ernie Shore, who came along from the Red Sox, along with Babe Ruth. And then for the more recent World Series titles, think about the '04 Red Sox. Mark Bellhorn wound up going to the Yankees. Alan Embry wound up going to the Yankees. Johnny Damon wound up going to the Yankees. Derek Lowe wound up eventually going to the Yankees. Who else was from that team? Well, Johnny Damon obviously went to the Yankees. Doug Mankiewicz went to the Yankees. Mike Myers, who was a solid left-handed reliever for the Red Sox at that time, wound up going to the Yankees. On the '07 team, Kevin Youkilis eventually wound up going to the Yankees. Someone else big from that team. I can't quite can't. From the 2013 team, Jacoby Ellsbury wound up going to the Yankees. I mentioned Derek Lowe. I think there was another. Maybe there was another pitcher along the way. I can't. These are all from the top of my head. And now Benintendi has gone to the Yankees. It's a proud tradition of bringing World Series champion Red Sox to the Yankees, and sometimes with success. Lest we forget, Johnny Damon had some solid years with the Yankees. It was a big part of the team that wound up winning the World Series. So Eric Hinsky was on the '07 Red Sox, and he wound up going to the Yankees. Oh, there must have been one or two others that are just not popping in my head. But so many players who were like in that '04 squad who were key parts to the Game 6 and 7 victories. Lowe, Bellhorn, Damon, Embry was the one who clinched the series. So it's a proud tradition of bringing them over. And, emotion aside, it's a smart move for the Yankees. They don't need an MVP. They already have an MVP. And Benintendi has been a solid player for Kansas City. And again, Gallo was also a solid player for the Rangers. So I digress. But we're starting that period where you're going to start seeing teams trading their players around like they're baseball cards. And as someone who grew up with piles and piles and piles of baseball cards, let me tell you something. I know a little something about trading baseball cards and loving those cards, and that weird sensation when you open up the packing, like, look at that player. What are they doing in that uniform? I didn't know they were traded to them, because sometimes that's how you got your dues. Back then, that's how you got your dues. That was part of the love of it back then. But it's a new time for baseball cards now. And I'm going to ask you to welcome to the world of sports cards reimagined, because the Sports Card Investor app is the hobby's most powerful resource. You can quickly check the value of your favorite cards, find great deals, and profit from the hobby that you love. Available completely free in the Google Play and Apple app stores. The Sports Card Investor app is a must-have for all baseball fans. It's completely free, and you can easily browse over 630,000 cards from every sport, with hundreds more added each week. Check the latest values and find your favorite cards with 7-day or 30-day charts, and find the best prices to buy directly through the app with our eBay deals feature. Now, download the Sports Card Investor app today, available for free in Google Play and Apple app stores, or go to sportsinvestor.com/locked on. And we're talking about trades and everything like that. By the way, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen every day. The Major League trade deadline is August 2nd, and Locked On MLB has all the breakdowns. Locked On MLB will have rapid reactions to any move made. So subscribe now to your favorite Locked On show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, so you can get notified when an episode premieres. All right. Really weird news today. Mike Trout's been out for a few days, and I just don't like it when Mike Trout isn't playing. It's not good. It's not good when we don't have Mike Trout playing. But I thought, like, oh, they were resting him. He took a few days off at the All-Star break, and the Angels are treating him with kid gloves. So I'm using this is an article. I'm going to read part of it from ESPN.com. The 10-time All-Star left the game on July 12th. So he's in place since July 12th. It's been a couple of weeks with back spasm. He went on the injured list with a rib cage. And on Wednesday, Mike Forstad, who's the trainer for the Angels, revealed it was a rare spinal condition. The Forstad said the doctor, who was one of the best known spine surgeons in the country, doesn't see a lot of these. That's disturbing when doctors, well-known doctors, are stumped. I said, happens to a baseball player. We just have to take into consideration this from the ESPN.com article. We have to put in consideration when he puts himself through hitting, swinging on a daily basis. There's so many things that can aggravate it. It's something to do with his spine. It's something to do with one of the vertebrae. Now, of course, Mike Trout is poo-pooing it. He's saying, oh, it's overblown and everything like that. And I hope he's right. But he's also a very competitive athlete. And they don't tend to be the best judges of their own bodies. When I start hearing things like rare spinal conditions that are stumping famous doctors, that stinks. It just stinks. And I don't want to hear that Mike Trout is suffering from anything rare in his, I don't want to hear anything rare. And the fact of the matter is, I'm sorry. I'm a little just a smidge tongue-tied right now. I don't want to deal with him possibly having a prolonged stretch on the injured list. I want to see more Mike Trout. And it's the frustrating thing. I got frustrated when I realized we're not going to see him in October anymore. I better see him in April, May, June, July, August, and September. I'm not ready to say goodbye to Mike Trout. I'm not. We haven't had the great Mike Trout moment. We've had Hall of Famers with their careers cut short. The one I'll always point to is Kirby Puckett. Now, when Kirby was playing, he was one of my all-time favorite players. We found out later that he wasn't the cute and cuddly guy that we all were made to believe he was after his death. But during his life, he was one of my favorite players, and I can't pretend that he wasn't. And his career was cut short, but he had already had a Hall of Fame caliber career, and he had already had the Kirby Puckett moments. He had in the one game where he made the famous leaping catch against the plexiglass and then hit the walk-off home run that made Joe Buck say, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Or Jack Buck. I'm sorry. Jack Buck said that. His son, Joe Buck, basically repeats that all the time. But the famous call, and we'll see you tomorrow night, where he hit the walk-off home run that forced a Game 7 in the greatest World Series ever played. He was already a World Series champion who hit huge hits in that postseason, but we had the Kirby Puckett game. When his career was cut short, Puckett had his 2 World Series rings, was an MVP in the postseason, and had a World Series game where he just said, jump on my back and I'll take you to Game 7. We don't have that with Mike Trout. We don't have it. We have years of numbers and numbers and numbers. And right now, if his career ended right now, and I hope it doesn't. But his season last year was only 36 games due to injury. And now here he is. He's going to be facing another major injury. When you start heading into your 30s, look at Ken Griffey Jr. You don't suddenly get super healthy again unless you ask A-Rod's cousin to come meet you in the bathroom with some needles. Now, if Trout's career is winding down, he's already the greatest Angel of all time. He is. I mean, if you go to the all-time Angel records, if you like some of the WAR and things like that, he is the highest WAR of any Angel position player. He is the highest on-base percentage and slugging and OPS in the history of the Angels. Now, he hasn't had as many hits. Like Garrett Anderson has like the most at-bats, plate appearances, runs scored, because he played more years. But things like home runs, Trout. Adjusted OPS, Trout. Runs created for a career, Trout. Adjusted batting runs, Trout. Adjusted batting wins, Trout. Offensive win production, Trout. Stolen base percentage, Trout. Something called power speed number, Trout. At bats per home run, Trout. Base out runs added. I don't know what that means. Trout. Wins probability added. Trout. Situational wins added. Trout. Base out wins added. I've never heard of that stat before. Trout. Up and down. It's traditional stats and newfangled stats. Trout, 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 Trout. The only thing that he doesn't have are the longevity stats, which Garrett Anderson had for years and years and years and years. And oh, by the way, Garrett Anderson was part of the World Series winning team for the Angels and got the huge hit in Game 7 of the World Series and got a bunch of hits against the Yankees and Minnesota Twins in that year's postseason. I hope I'm being an alarmist. I do. I'm not ready for the end of the Mike Trout era. And not just that. I remember when Griffey wound up having all those injured seasons with Cincinnati. And Griffey, who was my favorite non-Red Sox player ever. And I rooted for him like crazy. And when he was healthy in Cincinnati, he would show bursts of that brilliant player we saw in Seattle, but he just never stayed healthy long enough to sustain it. Now, we wound up hitting 600 home runs and having a superstar career, but those years in Cincinnati were hard to watch because you saw the glimpses. You saw he was still the super talented player, but he just wasn't on the field enough. I'm not ready for that part of Mike Trout's career yet. Whenever I see anyone get injured, I always overreact. You should see me watching a basketball game. Anytime anyone falls on the ground and has to be helped up by a coach, I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to have to amputate his legs. And then, 4 minutes later, he's dunking. So I get it. I overreact to things like this. When things are being said like rare spinal conditions that famous doctors aren't familiar with, that freaks me out a little bit. Come on, Trout. We need that moment. You're signed with the Angels until the heat death of the universe. So whatever happens is going to happen in Anaheim, not Los Angeles. But I want to see something great happen. I'm not ready to say goodbye. I'm not ready to say goodbye to the elite player yet. You're too much fun to watch. If you haven't watched him play, I've seen him play live a couple of times. It's fun. He's a fun player. He's a superstar. He's the greatest Angel of all time. He's already in the Hall of Fame. Doesn't mean I want it to end. Doesn't mean we're ready to say goodbye. Come on. Let's get it going here. Quick peek of what we've got on a not exactly full slate of games going on Thursday. Day games are being played. The Rays and the Orioles. The Rays, trying to hang on to their postseason spot. The Orioles are trying to get back over 500. The Reds and the Marlins are playing with no Castillo there. He's probably gone. He's probably traded. Phillies, Zach Wheeler is throwing this time against the Pirates. And the Phillies are they're only a half game behind the Cardinals. Hey, by the way, we give the Cardinals a little bit of credit as they're done with their trip up north. They got pounded that first game, but they won the second game, and Albert Pujols, who was the substitute for Goldschmidt, wound up hitting a big home run. So I gave those players a lot of crap for, not showing up, but give Pujols filling in the Goldschmidt void. The Royals and the Yankees, Benintendi is going to show up with the Royals and put on a Yankee uniform. Jameson Taillon, who's been great for part of this year and shaky for other parts, is up against Singer. Singer's actually having a nice season for the Kansas City Royals. The Tigers and the Blue Jays are playing. Kikuchi needs to start pitching better if the Blue Jays are going to continue their quest to have the home field throughout the division series or the wild card series. The Red Sox and the Guardians, McKenzie versus Crawford. Red Sox got to do something. But if the Guardians win, as I mentioned before, they'll be one game out. The Dodgers are going out to the Colorado Rockies. Dodgers have just been, had a huge win against the Washington Nationals, but playing in Colorado is always weird. Shohei Ohtani is starting for the Angels. Will this be his last start as a pitcher for the Angels? It could be if he's on the trade block. The Cubs and the Giants are playing. The Giants are going to be retiring Will Clark's number over the weekend. That's going to be interesting. And Urquidy versus Gilbert. The Astros and the Mariners are facing off. If the Mariners can win, they will cut the Astros lead to single digits. Again, not saying that that's going to make much of a difference, but the Mariners have dusted themselves off after that sweep, and they can make a real statement, especially with Julio Rodriguez back and swinging the bat well. So, got some games coming up. We got some trades beginning. But please, 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 Mike Trout's spine, prove that I'm overreacting. That's all I'm asking. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm on Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Looking at the trades, hoping the Stars aren't hurt, and getting set up for a Thursday of baseball. This is Locked On MLB for the 28th day of July, 2022. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.